John Burke reports.
The morning after, and Michael Wilson was back on Parliament Hill to face the cheers of his colleagues and the boos of his opponents. The cheers had been well orchestrated. The Mulroney strategy over the budget leak was to take the offensive, and a morning caucus strategy meeting was more like a locker room pep rally. But when the House opened for business, the opposition never let up all day in attacking Michael Wilson.
We're not talking about whether or not the Prime Minister can salvage a Minister of Finance. We're not talking of whether or not a Minister of Finance can survive. The Prime Minister should already have demanded his resignation, and this Minister should have already resigned.
The correct course of action would have been for the Minister of Finance, when he discovered this important breach for which he is ultimately responsible, he ought to have come into the House yesterday, said what happened, and submitted his resignation. He's an honorable man.
The opposition members want the resignation of the Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, may I say to you and say to the leaders of the two opposition parties and members of the House, you're not going to get his resignation.
The Mulroney front benches were shoulder to shoulder in defending Wilson, and it was the Prime Minister who made the most passionate plea on his behalf.
Canadians are concerned with the criminal and not with the honorable man. Canadians are concerned with the guy who stole the property. And we're all Canadians. You should be worried about the guy who stole the property.
But there were fresh allegations over the budget leaks reported in the Ottawa Citizen that an unnamed public servant found out budget details on Tuesday and told at least 20 friends. For most of the day, Wilson himself remained low-key, but finally he exploded.
If there was anybody who was aiding and abetting a criminal act, it was the Leader of the Opposition by not allowing it.
The Speaker made Wilson withdraw that allegation. But the criminal, not political scandal, was the consistent Tory defense.
There was a crime. There was a crime committed. Somebody apparently stole government documents.
Mulroney did his best to handle damage control, to deflect criticism away from Michael Wilson. He knows most Canadians like the finance minister, so do most opposition members. Still, the official Liberal and NDP line is, there is no finance minister, therefore there is no budget. To make that point, the opposition stormed out of the House of Commons just minutes ago in protest against Wilson's attempt to officially table his budget. John Burke, Global News, Ottawa.
The RCMP made the early morning visit on a clear mission. They had a warrant for the budget summary leaked to Global's Doug Small.
Now prepared to turn the document over?
I am indeed.
The little document of huge import is just one piece of the complex puzzle the Mounties are trying to construct. It's a massive probe into an unprecedented breach of budget secrecy.
It's a criminal matter. There's a crime there. The budget document has been stolen. It's a very serious matter, so the RCMP is working on that.
The investigation includes the finance department itself. It also focuses on the government's main printing plant. That's where about 200 supply and services employees handled the highly confidential material. Opposition MPs contend security at the plant was more lax than in previous years.
I want to ask him to confirm that unlike in the past, during the printing of this budget of his, that no secrecy oaths were sworn by those involved in the printing of the budget.
The minister responsible says security was as tight as ever.
It has been done in an appropriate and proper way. I perhaps should point out that I don't believe that mankind can perhaps design an absolutely perfect security process if there is somebody with criminal intent.
Meanwhile, there's also a probe into whether anyone could have profited financially on the stock markets because of the leak.
It's about the security commissions. We asked the four commissions everywhere in Canada to look at this.
The RCMP says it is taking a look at reports that a Defense Department employee also knew the budget's contents ahead of time and told about 20 other people. But they say at this stage they're treating that kind of second-hand information as rumor only. The Mounties say they really need to hear from people with first-hand information as they try to track down the source of the budget leak. Kathy Linus, Global News, Ottawa.
After opposition parties refused him the privilege of presenting his budget to Parliament last night, the finance minister came to the National Press Theatre to confirm the contents revealed earlier by Global News.
Earlier this evening, I was informed that a document entitled The Budget in Brief which was to have accompanied tomorrow's budget, was in the public domain. In the circumstances, it is my duty to act swiftly to cut short rumors, speculation, and uncertainty by making this information available to all Canadians.
Details of the budget obtained by Global were outlined in this summary, the so-called budget in brief. To raise money to cut the debt, a new 2% income surtax would be imposed July 1st. High-income earners, those making more than $70,000 a year, would be hit with another 3% tax on top of that. Effective yesterday, the excise tax on cigarettes would rise $4 a carton. Sales taxes on tobacco and alcohol would go up 1%. The excise tax on gasoline would rise 1 cent a liter. Big companies would pay a new large corporation tax on capital over $10 million.
I must advise on this extraordinary day marked by political precedent, the latest development came less than an hour ago when Speaker John Fraser sided with the government and ruled the budget should be tabled on schedule. As Finance Minister Michael Wilson stood, both opposition parties walked out of the House in protest. The Finance Minister, who has been under relentless attack since news of the budget leak broke, smiled sardonically as the Liberal and NDP members filed out of the chamber. His remarks were a recap of the hastily called news conference convened last night.
The paramount fiscal policy objective of this government is to continue getting the public debt under control through deficit reduction and to reinforce the policies that help to achieve the record of fiscal and economic progress.
It took Wilson less than 10 minutes to table the document. The opposition parties who marched out will return to the House to launch their attack on the document. The government refuses to call this a budget leak. The Prime Minister labels it theft, pure and simple, a criminal act the RCMP is now investigating.
Canadians are concerned with the criminal and not with the honorable man. Canadians are concerned with the guy who stole the property.
When the Finance Minister tried to table his document earlier in the day, amid jeers and cheers, he proclaimed his government blameless in the scandal.
That this violation did not result from negligence, carelessness, or lack of proper security arrangements for the budget documents.
But the opposition had Wilson on a very sharp hook, and they were not letting go. Calling this the most serious matter of his life, a firebrand John Turner footnoted history, evoking the Magna Carta and the American Revolution.
The government may try to trivialize this, a minor theft. This is the issue which before the British House of Commons, the commoners put a king to death. This is the issue over which the United States went to revolution. This is the fundamental issue of taxation and representation. That's what it is. That's what it is. The Prime Minister scoffs. The Prime Minister, before this debate is over, is going to learn what parliamentary democracy is all about.
The opposition demanded Wilson's resignation. Ed Broadbent called the Finance Minister's credibility completely shot, and he demanded assurances that no one profited from this leak.
I want him to say, will he assure us that there is no Canadian that used this information for private gain, and if he can't give us that assurance, will he give us his resignation? Hear, hear.
The Prime Minister refused to get caught up in the supercharged atmosphere of the day, rarely allowing his voice to rise. No, he did not ask for Wilson's resignation, and no, he would not accept it if it were offered.
Why, and I use his words, why is this man still Minister of Finance? Because he is one of the most distinguished and honorable public servants ever in Canada.
That same Minister of Finance is responsible for the biggest parliamentary blunder in Canadian history.
Paul Rogers, CFPO News.
Just about everything.